Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Allison and today I'm going to talk about my winter knitting plans. First and foremost, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the number of subscribers that I've gained over the last little while. I recently just hit 500, which is just so mind-blowing to me. So thank you to everyone who has watched my videos, subscribed to my channel. I'm really happy and excited that you guys are liking what I'm putting out. And I'm having so much fun with this. I really hope to continue for as long as people will watch. I know I haven't really been consistent with uploads. I'm kind of just doing it when I can, considering that I am quite busy. I do have a full-time job and, you know, filming, especially in the winter when we have such limited daylight, isn't always super convenient. So I just really appreciate everybody who has stuck around. And yeah, lots more to come next year, I hope. My apologies if the lighting isn't optimal today. It's been so cloudy and gloomy here in Montreal for like the last 2 weeks. So I'm trying my best with what we've got going here. Decided to set myself up in front of our little Christmassy corner here in our condo. And today I'm gonna go over all of the winter knitting plans that I have. This is going to basically include things I want to knit from January onward, since it is still a few days before Christmas. I do still have a few gift knits on the needles, and so those are my priority. Those are my plans for the next week or so. We are seeing family kind of spread out throughout the week, so they don't all have to be ready by Christmas Day, which I'm really thankful for because they won't be. But yeah, so those are my plans up until, I guess, the 31st, and then January 1st, we're gonna get started on all of these plans, which I'm really excited about. Before jumping into my plans, I will just quickly mention what I'm wearing. This is the Good Grandpa cardigan by Kadri. I knitted this up 2 years ago now in Knit Picks Wool of the Andes, either worsted or bulky. I don't remember, but I will leave it down below. And it's just a simple oversized cardigan that actually has a couple of pockets, which was the first and only time I've ever knitted pockets. I don't use them all that much, but I like what they add to the cardigan. And I do actually get quite a bit of wear out of this. It's nice and warm. Not the softest, I would say, but I'm okay with wool that is a little bit rougher. Yeah, it's just a great cardigan pattern, not much to say. So my first winter knitting plan, or I'll say the first 2 winter knitting plans that I have here, are whips that are still on my needles from earlier in the year that I just never got around to finishing, either because I was working on gift knits or I just lost steam and moved on to something else for the time being. So the first one I'm going to discuss is my Darling cardigan by Kutovakika. This, I cast it on, I believe, last February because I thought, oh, this is a cute cardigan to have for Valentine's Day. It's bright pink. And then got distracted knitting other things, and before I knew it, it was summer and I did not need a fluffy, warm alpaca cardigan. So this went on the back burner, but I really hope to finish it next year because it is so soft. This is what I have so far. So basically just the body and like maybe 2 or 3 inches of a sleeve. I also did already knit the double knit button band. I accidentally put the buttonholes on the wrong side, but that's fine. I don't often button up my cardigans, so I don't think it's going to bother me all that much. So this is knitted out of 2 strands of drops brushed alpaca silk held together. And it creates this really fluffy, soft, light fabric. This is incredibly light. So it is something I'm really looking forward to having in my wardrobe. I have mentioned before I don't often wear bright colors like this one. I think my color palette tends to lean more winter, so think like dark, kind of like navy burgundy shades. But I love pink, and this will be super fun to have in the spring and maybe even in the summer during cold nights. I do have a bit of a concern that I maybe knitted the button band a bit too tight, but I am okay with this being a little cropped. And I got some really nice mother of pearl buttons, so I think those will look really nice on the pink as well. So this is definitely high priority for early next year. The next whip that I have that I want to finish next year is my Monday sweater by PetiteKnit. I won't talk too much about this because I have talked ad nauseum in other podcast episodes about it. But essentially it is the Monday sweater by PetiteKnit, raglan style sweater. I'm knitting it up in Knit Picks Twill and Woolberry Fibre Co. Alpaca Suri in the colorway Flock, which is really hard to show off, but it is just a beige grayish color with a ton of different speckles in it. And I'm loving how it's knitting up so far. Another one that is just so unbelievably soft, so I really cannot wait to wear this. But I just had other things that were taking priority, so this will have to wait until early next year, but I can't wait. I'm basically 2 or 3 rows into the ribbing. I actually needed my 3.5s for a gift knit I'm working on right now, so I had to put on these bigger needles just while I'm waiting. But I do imagine that this will probably fly off the needles once I can get back to it. All I have is the ribbing and the sleeves, so it's really gonna be quick. I can't stop feeling it, it's really so soft. All right, jumping into my plans now that I have not yet casted on. The majority of these are going to be from stash because I found myself buying a lot of yarn in the last year and not using it. So I am really trying to use what I have in stash. There are a couple projects I have here that are like dream projects that maybe I will buy yarn for and make them within the winter, but I will be trying to prioritize the ones that come from my stash yarn just because I have it and I have to use it. So the first thing on my list is the Burgos vest by Rosa Pomar. It's just a simple V-neck vest with buttons down the front. I was actually inspired to knit this because one of my good friends has also knitted it, showed up to my house one day wearing it, and it was gorgeous. And I, since then, really wanted to knit it. She knit hers up in a bunch of different scrap yarns that she had, so it looked really cool, very similar to the photo on the Ravelry page. In my case, I plan on knitting it up just in one color because I, again, have other scrappy projects that I'm working on that I don't need to wear a scrappy vest. I don't know that it's something I would wear all that often. I think in the future it could be something fun to try as a scrappy garment project. But right now, because I have the yarn amount in stash, I think for now I will just be going with the solid color. So this calls for a worsted weight yarn, so a sport and a lace weight held together, which is actually exactly what I have for once following the recommendation. I swear every time there's a recommendation for yarn, I tweak it somehow. I don't often knit with mohair or Suri alpaca, so when I do have it in stash, it's nice that I can actually get to use it. So for the main yarn, I was planning to use this good wool from Purl Soho. This is in the color Red Prune, and it is a sport weight wool. I've never actually used good wool, but I do have more in stash as well that I'll get to later. And I purchased this early last year and never actually got around to using it, so I am really excited. I've heard good things. But it's just this kind of burgundy, almost browny color. It is definitely heathered with like some brownish, blackish bits, but mainly is just a burgundy. And I was thinking of holding it together with this Hobbii alpaca blaze that I have that has been in my stash for years. I used this to knit up my Stockholm sweater by PetiteKnit years ago. I held it with the Knitting for Olive mohair in Bordeaux, which was not really a perfect match, but it was good enough. So it's definitely a marled looking sweater. In this case though, I would say that's pretty damn near perfect. This is more of a solid color while this is heathered, obviously, but I think they will look pretty perfect together. And I do think I have enough of the alpaca blaze in stash that I can hold it throughout. I haven't actually measured, but I do have 3.5 balls of it. So I think it should be pretty close. I do tend to knit my garments a little bit cropped anyway, so I tend to use under the recommendation. So I think I should be okay. But I am really excited to have this in my wardrobe. I've been wanting to knit more vests in general, I only have one, and it's the vest number 8 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. And I don't wear it all that often. I wore it this week to work because I feel like it's a little bit festive, but I definitely did knit that one a little bit longer than I would prefer. So I think this one we're gonna go a bit more cropped, and hopefully I can get a lot of wear out of that because I really love this color. I will talk more about my overall knitting goals for next year in another video, but for now I will touch on one of them, and that is to knit more accessories, particularly socks, because I got my first pair of sock needles this year. Actually have already started knitting a sock that I showed off in a previous podcast episode. This was meant to be for my husband. Only issue is that it is too big. So I did have to frog it back, or I will have to frog it. And I just never got around to recasting it on and re-knitting it. So this is something that we'll have to wait until next year. But I did actually make some adjustments in the yarns rather, that I want to use for this knit. So let me back up here. The sock that I had knit previously was the I'm So Basic sock by Summer Lee. I figured this was a good one to start with just because it is a plain vanilla stockinette sock, no added texture. I didn't want to make this harder on myself than it had to be. And because I'm knitting socks for my husband, he typically just wears plain socks. So I feel like this is a good place to start with my sock knitting. So originally I had knit this up in 2 shades of Stroll from Knit Picks. I believe this one is white and this one is called Midnight. I will correct that if it's not wrong, if it's not right. And I do think that the contrast is cool, but more recently I came upon a different sock yarn that I thought was really cool, and so I kind of changed up my plan a little bit when it comes to these socks. So I would love to knit my husband a pair of socks. I would also love to knit myself a pair of socks just to see my first one. So for my husband's socks, I chose these colors here. The blues are not a perfect match. This is the Midnight Stroll from Knit Picks that I have in the other sock. And this is Patons Kroy sock in the color Gray Brown Marl. So from my understanding, just by looking at this ball, I believe it will be self-striping. Please correct me on that if I'm not right. I've never knitted socks before in my life. But I just thought that this color palette was really nice and on par with the things that he would wear and does wear. And I thought that I could use this blue that I already have in stash as a contrast color for the cuff, toe, and heel. So like I said, it's not a perfect match, but I think it's pretty close. I don't think he'll mind. And I think that they'll look really cool when they're all knitted up. So this is my plan for his pair of I'm So Basic socks. For my own pair, I have mentioned this also in a previous video, but I have this Berry Cozy sock yarn from Woolberry Fibre Co. in the color I Have Mail, which is kind of a plummy purple with reds throughout, which I just think is so gorgeous. I don't have yarn like this. I don't typically tend to lean towards purples, but I just couldn't resist. This was one of the collective colors, I believe sometime in the fall, maybe August or September. And it's just so gorgeous. So I'm gonna knit up my own pair of the I'm So Basic socks using this as the main color and then the Stroll white as the contrast. So it'll definitely be high contrast. There's no white in the main color, so it might be a bit of a dramatic, stark color choice. We'll see how I like it. I'm very happy to experiment and kind of play around with colors. Now that I've kind of dipped my toes into color work, it could be fun to just sort of throw things at the wall and see what sticks in terms of color palettes. So I am excited for that as well. I will be prioritizing my husband's socks and then I will probably knit mine on afterwards. But I am excited for both of these pairs of socks. I think they'll be really cute, and that's all I have to say. Speaking of my husband, I recently had him pick out some yarn to knit him a sweater. I've knit him one sweater in the past, the Hans Home sweater by PetiteKnit, and he still does wear it pretty frequently, but because I knitted it a few years ago, when I look at it now, I do notice things that I would have changed had I known better, such as, you know, giving a little bit of a thicker collar, maybe elongating the sleeves even more than I already did. I'm still very happy with this project, but I think it's high time that I knit him another one. So the yarn that he picked out was the Knit Picks palette in the color Hazelnut, which is this really nice warm brown shade. He tends to lean toward a lot of earthy tones in his clothing, so a lot of grays, browns, olive greens, beiges, stuff like that. Very neutral color palette, I would say. So I think this color will be perfect for him. I have knitted myself a sweater in the past with palette, so he was able to feel it and see if he liked it, and he did. So I'm really excited to work with this yarn again. I've worked with it a couple times now, and it's always been a great experience, and for the price point, it's definitely a good option if you want to knit a larger garment for a larger person, because it is so affordable, and especially if you want to hold yarn double for whatever you're knitting. This is a fingering weight yarn, and I plan on knitting him a DK weight pattern, so I'd have to hold these double. So in total I ended up buying, I think, 16 balls of this yarn, which is definitely not in everyone's budget at all. It's not in my budget depending on the kind of yarn that I choose, but because I went with Knit Picks palette, it was very reasonable, and I also purchased it when they were having, I believe it was their Black Friday sale or maybe an earlier sale in the year. So all in all, I really didn't spend all that much on this. So definitely a recommendation for you if you want to knit a pattern for someone in a larger size that requires a lot of yarn. Knit Picks is just the best for that. Always my go-to when it comes to large quantities. So the pattern that I have decided to knit him, or the pattern we decided on together, because I kind of showed him a bunch of options and he liked all of them, but I said, you gotta pick one. So he chose the Mobi Sweater Man by PetiteKnit. Now, I knew I wanted to make him a more textured cabled sweater. A lot of the patterns I was finding that I was liking are seamed, which I tend to stray from just because I don't have confidence in my seaming abilities. I've done it in the past, it was fine, but I think I would rather it look as nice and neat as possible, and I know that if I'm doing any seaming, that's not gonna happen. I also figured it was safe to go with a PetiteKnit pattern because her patterns are so tried and trusted that, you know, I have tons of options if I want to look at what other people did on Ravelry or on Instagram. There will be a ton of people who have already knitted this pattern, and we can see what it looks like on different types of bodies in different colors, etc. I was also a bit hesitant when it came to picking a pattern, just because there were, for example, I really enjoyed the new Dagmar sweater by PetiteKnit. That was kind of more in line with the type of cabled sweater that I wanted to knit him. However, because she doesn't have a men's version out, I was concerned about the width, particularly of the shoulders, and just the overall fit in general. I wasn't sure if just picking that pattern and sizing up would work for what I wanted, because he is quite tall and he does have fairly broad shoulders. So I just wanted to make sure it was fitting properly. So I figured going with a pattern that is already designed for more masculine bodies was the way to go for this. So yeah, the Mobi Sweater Man, I feel like most people know this pattern at this point, but of course I will include a photo. It doesn't have too many cables. I think it just has the main cables that go down the front and back, and the whole middle section is kind of a diamond motif created out of faux cables. I have actually knit this pattern before for a baby, so it took me just far less time than this one will, I'm sure. I knitted this up for my best friend's baby shower last year in, I believe, Sandiscarn Double Sunday, and it was a very enjoyable knit. I think because of the size, that definitely contributed to how enjoyable it was. It wasn't too daunting, very approachable, because a lot of it is faux cabling, and the main rest of the sweater that isn't the cable motif in the middle is done in moss stitch. So all very simple techniques. I think this is probably a good project if you're just trying to dip your feet into knitting more textured and cabled garments, because there isn't too much cabling in it. The rest is just mostly done with knits and purls and a few faux cables. But yeah, so like I mentioned, this is knit up in a DK weight. I believe for the sample she uses pure Gint, which I've never used. I would love to one day, but that was just not possible for this sweater with the budget right now. And it is knit up primarily on 4mm needles, which I think is pretty standard for most PetiteKnit patterns, the DK 4mm needle combo. Name a more iconic duo. I don't yet know what size I'm going to knit for him. I will have to take his measurements. I believe when I did the Hands Home sweater, I knit him a small, but then I ended up having to pretty dramatically increase the length of the sleeves and the body. So that might be the case for this one as well. I'm happy to take my time and really, you know, work on this and make sure that it's going to be a project that fits him perfectly, that he will love and will wear, hopefully forever, or for a long time until it's got holes in it. But yeah, I think a men's PetiteKnit pattern is just a perfect safe option for me. I didn't want to have to go in and, you know, manipulate any charts for any sweater that maybe wasn't accommodating of wider shoulders. So I think this will be a great choice. He likes the pattern. I showed him a bunch of photos on Instagram and he gave me the go ahead. So this will probably be my first garment cast on of the new year, and I'm really, really excited. I anticipate it taking me, I don't know, probably at least a couple months. So I don't think he'll be wearing this until maybe next winter. But I think it'll be well worth it to take the time and really make sure that it's perfect. And I'm really excited. My last in-stash knitting plan that I have, I really would like to use this other color of good wool that I have. This is the color Teal Abyss. Again, this is a 100% Peruvian wool, and I have 4 of these, so I think I could knit myself a pretty nice sized sweater with it. I bought it because I liked the color, didn't have anything in mind for it, and it's been in my stash now for over half a year, so I really would like to use it. I don't knit much with blue, for myself at least. I don't think I've ever knit myself a blue garment actually, so I'm really, really excited to, you know, try a new color. I don't wear much blue in general actually, but I know it, like, it's supposed to work with my palette, so I'm definitely open to it. Maybe not this blue, this is a bit of a warmer blue, but anyway. This is a sport weight, so I think I could probably pretty easily sub it for a DK. So I've been looking at patterns that are either sport or DK weight. If my gauge is slightly off, I don't really mind at the end of the day. I'm not a huge stickler for gauge unless it's hugely important to the garment. But because I knit most of my sweaters oversized anyway, I don't really think it'll make a huge difference. So yeah, I've been racking my brain. I know in my fall knitting plans, I had mentioned a completely other sweater that I was going to knit with this. And since then I've had like 4 or 5 other ideas, and I keep getting cold feet. So hopefully me putting this out there into the world and committing to it will actually be what I need to get this casted on. So yeah, the pattern that I chose is the Braidy Loop sweater by Other Loops. I've never knitted a pattern by this designer before, but I have had my eyes on this pattern for quite some time now. It's been sitting in my queue on Ravelry because I know I want to knit it, I just never knew when. I think in my mind I had envisioned this in more of a neutral color, maybe a like beige or a brown, but because it calls for a DK weight yarn and I do have this in stash and I do want to use it, I think it's gonna happen. This sweater is a saddle shoulder design featuring a really wide rib all over the sweater, but sort of the special design feature to it that really drew me to it in the first place is the statement cable that runs down each sleeve. I believe there are 2 on each sleeve, and the second one kind of crosses around the back all the way to the other arm. So it's a really beautiful design, not like anything I've seen before. And I think after a very cable heavy year last year, and again with the Mobi Sweater Man that I'm about to embark on, I think it'll be nice to still get the effect of a cable in a garment, but not have it be all over texture. I think just one cable every once in a while will be a lot more manageable for me and a lot more enjoyable. I think it's a lot more approachable for maybe people who haven't knit too many cables and wanted to give it a try. I think it's such a striking detail. It's really unique. I've never seen this in other garments before. I know Other Loops also has the Braidy Loop cardigan, which does feature the same cable, also gorgeous. I just feel really drawn to the sweater, and I'm really excited to finally get this cast on. I just think it's such a cool design, and I think that it'll look really nice in this tealy blue color. I really can't wait to get this casted on. It's such a gorgeous design. I think that cable is just so sick. I think it's so cool. So I really can't wait to get started on this. This will be my first garment for myself in the new year that isn't already on my needles. So yeah, I'm really super excited for that. The next couple plans that I have are more so dreams, I guess. These are things that I do not have yarn in stash for, but I really would love to knit because they are all winter accessories, and so I don't think they'll be so relevant 3 months time when I'm doing my spring planning. So I think if I can squeeze this in, I would really love to. So the first pattern that I have here is the penny gloves by PetiteKnit. I actually have knitted these in the past, but they were a gift for a friend of mine. I knitted them out of Knit Picks Swish DK, which is my go-to gift yarn, which I've mentioned many times before on this channel. I just think these are such a great staple pattern. It's a very simple design, honestly. There's no ribbing at all. It's just kind of a tube with a thumb and no fingers at the top. But I really enjoyed knitting them, and after I had casted them off before gifting them, I was, wearing them, and I was like, okay, I really like these. I think I need a pair. Especially with, living in Canada, having really cold winters. Oftentimes I am wearing just real gloves. It's too cold to not, but occasionally, sometimes it's cold, but not that cold. If I want to use my phone outside, if I want to knit while I'm walking, which again, I don't do all that much in the winter because it's cold, but I think having a pair of penny gloves would open those doors for me. I just also think they're very chic and trendy, and I think they're just a cool kind of statement piece to have. I don't have yarn in stash specifically for this pattern, but I do have a lot of scrap yarn, probably in the correct amounts for this. So in theory, I could knit these up with a number of different yarns that I have left over in my stash. So we'll see. I don't see myself necessarily purchasing new yarn just for this when I do have bits and bobs here and there of scraps. The last time I knitted these, I also did knit them a little bit shorter in the wrist area. And I would probably do that again for myself. So all in all, I don't think I would need all that much yarn for it. I could maybe even use some leftovers of the good wool from either of those projects, since this does call for a sport weight yarn. But yeah, these have kind of been on my wish list for a couple of years now, or ever since she released the pattern. I just have to actually commit and knit them for myself, but I don't think it would be too time consuming of a project. I think these would probably get done in a weekend. So I just need to, cast it on, not think about it, just do it and go for it. And then a couple days later, I'll have a nice pair of fingerless gloves. So I think as far as my dream plans go, this one would be at the top of the list, just because I don't really have many nice gloves. I have knitted myself scarves and hats in the past. I've never knit myself gloves or mittens. So this would be a really nice addition to my knit wardrobe and something new. The next project is another one that I've had on my queue for a little while. I'm pretty sure I first discovered this pattern through Woozy by Celine's channel because I think she knitted herself this one. This is the Simple Knit Hood by Leah Lika. It's knit up in a bulky weight, and it's just a really, as the title suggests, simple hood. So similar to a balaclava, but I would say it looks a little bit looser and really does resemble more of a hood from a sweatshirt rather than a traditional balaclava that you would think of when you think of balaclavas. It's knit up with 2 strands of lace weight yarn, so it is very, very fluffy. So this is definitely not something I do have yarn in my stash for, considering I don't typically have too much mohair on hand at any time. But I think this would be such a great accessory to have, particularly for my wool coat that I wear. So of course, living in Canada, I do have a parka that I wear most of the time when it's really, really frigid. But I also have a nice wool trench coat that I love that doesn't have a hood. So I think this could be a nice option to add to it if ever I'm just wearing it without a hoodie underneath or don't feel like wearing my hat. This could be a really cute, trendy little piece to have. And I think it would be even really fun to knit this up in the same yarn that I knit up my penny gloves in. So now that I think about it, maybe I will purchase more yarn for these projects and make it kind of a set together. But yeah, I just think this is a really nice, simple design. And I have been a little bit intimidated by balaclavas because when I think of balaclavas, I think of the ugly, uncomfortable balaclavas that my mom used to force on us when we were kids that we always hated wearing. So now I see people wearing them more often and I'm like, oh, those look really nice. I feel like I want to knit myself one, but I don't know that I would love the tight feeling of it around the face. And especially because if I have my hair done, it'll squish it down. Anyway, I think the hood is kind of a nice like in between. But I do think they're gorgeous, and I think every time I see one on Instagram, I'm more and more inclined to knit one. I want to test the waters first with the hood, and then maybe we'll see. Last but not least for this video is probably my most like up in the air plan. I don't even have a specific pattern that I've committed to yet. I just know that I want to knit myself a shawl. I knitted myself the Sophie shawl last winter, but I didn't actually purchase the Sophie shawl pattern. I just adapted the Sophie scarf pattern. And I think my increases and decreases were a little different from what PetiteKnit has in the shawl pattern. And so my version is not quite as wide as hers. So this year I really wanted to knit myself a big, wide, chunky shawl, something that I could bring with me to the office or even wear in my home office when I'm working, because I do tend to get cold when I'm working. I think our office is always a little too cold for me. So I have a scarf that I can wrap around myself if anything, but I would love to hand knit a shawl to serve that purpose. And then it's something that I can also wear outside as a shawl as well. So there are a few kind of ideas that I had, the patterns that I had looked into. Again, I haven't committed to anything yet. I don't have yarn in stash. It's just an idea. The first one that I found was the Wedge Wrap by Purl Soho. This is definitely the most plain, I guess, of the ones that I found that I was drawn to. It's knit up in a worsted weight, and it is basically just a trapezoidal shawl. And again, very plain, knitted up in stockinette, so nothing too complicated. I don't know yet if I want to go like the more complicated textured route or just have a plain shawl. I think plain could be more versatile, but again, it would depend, right? I think if I did go the stockinette route, I would probably choose a yarn that's a little bit more fun and colorful. Versus if I did textured, I might keep it a little bit more neutral. So the Wedge Wrap was one that I was looking at, and actually the one that I kind of had decided I was going to knit until I started doing a little bit more digging onto shawls. And there are just so many shawl patterns on Ravelry, I swear, like so many extremely intricate, lacy, different, you know, spiky designs on the edges. the shawl knitting community is just insanely talented. Like, I've seen some shawls with things that I've never seen before in knitting. I think because it's just like a triangle most of the time, you can really explore your creativity. I don't see myself knitting one of those overcomplicated, overly, I guess, intricate shawls at this time, but I was just blown away when I was looking through all these patterns. The next one that I saw that I was really drawn to is the Daft Day shawl by Rebecca Clow of the Kroy. This is, again, just a triangular shawl, but it is knitted in a slip stitch pattern, and it actually features stripes all throughout. So I believe this was designed to use a yarn advent with it, because the stripes are so small, and you could, in theory, have like 24 different days of stripes throughout this, which I'm sure looks absolutely beautiful. I don't really have any minis of skeins, so I would probably just pick my own colors whenever I purchased the yarn. That was my dishwasher. I don't know yet what kind of color palette I would want, how many different colors I would want. I just think it's beautiful, and especially in the photos on the Ravelry page that Rebecca knitted this up in, I think look gorgeous together. So this is definitely one that I can see myself knitting, maybe not, if not this year, definitely in the future. I think it's a really nice size as well, and just overall gorgeous. I don't really wear many stripes, so I think having a striped accessory could be fun. And yeah, definitely one that I am considering. The last one that I've been looking at is the Sunday Morning Shawl by Espace Tricot, who are actually a local yarn shop to me. This one, I guess, would definitely be the more intricate of the three, simply because it includes a row of baubles toward the bottom of the shawl. Historically, I have not loved knitting baubles, so jury's still out whether we will include those or omit them. But I just think it's a really gorgeous pattern once again. I really like the little ribbing details throughout. I'm not sure what that is, if it's like a slip stitch pattern or just like a 1x1 rib that they used to create stripes in the shawl. I think if I were going to lean toward a more textured shawl, this is the kind of route I would take. It's textured, but it doesn't look like it's something that's going to take too much brain power for me if I just want to sit around and knit this in front of the TV. Again, I think because I've knitted a lot of cables in the last year and I do still have some on my plate, I am leaning a little bit more towards simplicity in some of my knits, specifically in texture. So we will see. I think all of these options are definitely on the table. I love all three of them for different reasons. Maybe one day I will own all three of them, but for now, I think I will just kind of sit on it, decide which one would suit me best, and then go from there. But I definitely will be prioritizing those things that I do have yarn in stash for. But I think a shawl could be a fun thing to do, maybe even into the spring, and maybe with a nice big fluffy yarn as well, so that it doesn't take too long to knit up. I think because it's not a garment, you can sort of take some liberties on yarn weight when you are knitting these up. If my shawl comes out bigger than how it's supposed to, then great. I would love that. I would love a huge big blanket shawl to wrap around me while I'm working. So I think I would maybe lean toward a bulkier weight yarn anyway, but those are plans that I will solidify in the future once I've gotten all of this yarn taken care of. So that's it for my winter knitting plans. Thank you so much for tuning in. And again, if you have subscribed in the last little bit, it really, really means a lot to me. So thank you. This has been so fun. Like I said, I don't really see myself having a consistent schedule moving forward. But whenever I have enough to share, I'm so happy to come on here and do so. I'm definitely planning on filming an Everything I Knit in 2024 video, which are just my favorite videos to watch ever. So I'm super excited to join in and actually make my own this year. So that'll probably be coming early in the new year, and I'll be back soon with a regular podcast episode. I hope everyone has a wonderful and safe holiday season. Take some time to disconnect, relax, enjoy your knitting in your pajamas on the couch with a cup of hot chocolate or tea. I love getting to slow down a little bit during the holiday season, even though I am working a couple days. So I really am looking forward to also just being a little gremlin on the couch with my knits. I have been definitely on a knitting kick over the last few months, and I just want to knit all the time. So I know that the few days off I have over the holidays will be spent doing just that. So anyways, thank you so much again for tuning in, and I will see you in my next video.